Hello, I'm C.E. Chester. Welcome to the Fiction Expedition, where I explore a place and then write a short story inspired by the location. Today I'm at Garnet Ghost Town, the most intact ghost town in Montana. Okay, here is the map page for western Montana. Here is Missoula. Here is Great Falls. And here is Butte. Garnet Ghost Town is here in the Garnet Mountain Range. Cabins were built along the road up the hill. In case someone got caught in bad weather, they could have a place to get warm and get out of the storm. This was the original cabin left from last century. And this is the new cabin for today's snowmobilers, in case they get stranded up here. There's a trail from the parking area to the town, and it comes down to this little viewing platform down so you can look down into the town. This is what remains of the downtown area after the fire of 1912 that burned down most of it. And then you can see the cabins from the miners lived in on the hill above it. At the largest population boom, there were 13 bars in town. This was Kelly's bar. Even has a piano. Back room with card table still here, and a set of stairs that go up. The women had to climb up a back staircase and go in this door to drink discreetly upstairs where the men didn't see them. This was Davy's general store, and he never made it rich because he would never turn down someone in need. The cash register is still here, though it doesn't look very functional. This outhouse had 3 holes. I don't know how comfortable I'd be having strangers come in and join me. In its heyday, there were 4 hotels in town. This is the only one that remains, and it was considered a touch of elegance in the wilderness. The door you see on the 2nd floor was to bring heavy trunks in. They would use that pole up there to hoist them up so they didn't have to carry them up the stairs. Much of the furniture is still here in the front parlor. You can see there used to be nice wallpaper in here. Not much left of it anymore. Nice big kitchen with a storeroom off on that side. There were 9 rooms total on the 2nd floor. These were the fancy rooms. Here's another one. If you were short on money and need to get out of the bad weather, you could come up here and rent a section of the floor to put your bedroll down on, up on the 3rd floor. There was a blacksmith shop. Much of the equipment is still in here. Rock drill with 2 of the bits sticking in the rock. This was a miner's cabin that they're now using for storage. A couple of birds living in here also. This outhouse was centrally located to be used by multiple cabins. This was one of the nicer homes. It had a family living in it. It had 2 rooms. This was the honeymooners' cabin. The store owner, Davy, offered this to anyone who got married until they could build their own, or until another couple got married and needed it. They could live here rent-free. Here we have one of the ore carts out of the mine. This is where the vertical shaft was, and that's the winch that pulled the buckets of rocks up out. Here are the mine shafts. If you can see the second one behind this one, have the big fences around so people don't fall in and get hurt. Try and get closer, see if I can see down inside. filled with water right now. Well, it was a scenic walk the miners had to and from work every day. Back at the parking lot, there was a sign that said that the loop was 20 to 30 minutes. Pretty sure they meant the Sierra Trail, because I just took the Pacer Trail, and that was a couple miles of not as nice trail. Much longer. Got a doe up here staring at me as I walk by on the trail. This is only my second episode, and I've already noticed a trend of my plans not working out once I start filming on location. I had planned on writing, sitting at that picnic table in the shade, and then reading it from some overlooking the town. The only problem is I had forgotten half my lunch on my kitchen counter and was getting a little bit hangry. And there were deer flies biting. So between the two, I decided to go home, and you're stuck getting the story from my favorite chair again. As you saw in the video clip, I wrote the story out longhand on paper, and that is my favorite way to write a rough draft. But there were a lot of typos and scratched out sections, making it hard to read. So I typed it up, and I'm reading to you from my tablet. Mining Town by C.E. Chester. We're going to take this load up. Frank looked across the dark mine to the men putting the last of the rocks in the ore cart. Good timing. I've got these holes drilled. I'll set the dynamite and blast another section of the wall while you guys do that. Everything dimmed as the other men's lanterns were carried away. With just the glow of one flame, he set the explosives and ran the detonation cord. There was a small side tunnel they dug following a vein that had petered out. He used that to protect himself from the blast. After double checking, he had it all laid out correctly and making sure he'd picked up everything so that it didn't get buried by the rubble. He pushed down the plunger, making all the sticks blast at the same time. He'd forgotten to cover his face and pulled his bandana up as the shock wave hit him. Most of the blast, and the dust and rocks carried with it, went up the main shaft. His lantern was blown out by the little bit that made it down the side tunnel. Not liking the pitch-black darkness this far underground, he got out the candle and matches he carried in his pocket. The glow of the candle revealed air so thick with dust he couldn't see the wall across from him. He used the candle to light the lantern. The brighter light reached farther, but the view didn't improve. The dust in the air was too thick to see through. Eventually, the dust settled and he could see what the blast had done. The ground that had been cleared was covered in broken rocks. The guys were going to be happy because most of the rocks were already small enough to pick up. When he looked up, he couldn't believe his eyes. The blast should have taken a few feet off the wall, and that was the amount of debris he had around him. Yet the new end of the tunnel was 8 feet farther away. He slowly climbed over the pile of rocks, with them shifting under his feet, to where he had set the charges. The blast had made an archway tall enough that he could walk under it without ducking. Tentatively, he stepped through, surprised when the cavern opened up on each side of him. It took him a moment to realize he hadn't blasted into a natural cavern. He was standing in another tunnel. Was somebody digging the gold out from underneath them? Frank could see a faint glow off to his right. That must be the exit. He headed that direction, wanting to see where it came out and hoping to find some indication of who had dug the tunnel. Whoever had done it had done a fabulous job. The ground was flat, the walls were smooth, and the ceiling was secure despite its lack of supports. He knew being underground could be disorienting. He felt like he was going downhill instead of up, but the light was getting brighter. He pressed on. The tunnel opened up to a large cavern on the edge of a huge underground lake. A city glowed on the far shore. He had found the source of the light, and it wasn't an exit. He stared, disbelieving, at the buildings about a quarter of a mile away. Movement to his right caught his eye. There was a boat on the water. The person on the bow pointed his direction, and the boat changed course. It was coming at him. His instinct was to get back up to the mine, but a feeling of calm swept over him. He looked down at his hands, covered in dirt, and realized it wasn't just his hands. He brushed what he could off of his clothes, splashed water on his face, and cleaned his hands best he could in the lake. When he stood back up, the boat slid to a stop in the sand in front of him. 3 people with pale skin and silvery white hair stood at the rail. As they climbed down into the calf-deep water, he realized the middle one was a woman, the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. Her simple white dress showed off her curves. "Greetings, surface dweller." As Frank turned to the man leading the group, he realized the words hadn't been spoken. He had heard them inside his head. "Howdy," Frank replied out loud. "How did you find us?" Frank knew he was somewhere he wasn't supposed to be. His stomach knotted with dread. Another wave of calm washed over him, and the 3 strangers gave him reassuring smiles. "I blasted out a section of the mine and ended up in your tunnel." "Yes, we heard the blast." The feminine voice felt like being caressed by velvet. "Can you show us where?" The masculine voice was relaxing, but didn't feel as good. An overwhelming urge to do what they asked made Frank turn and walk back up the tunnel. The guy that was first off the boat walked beside him, and the other man and woman followed a step behind. When he glanced back over his shoulder to take another look at the woman, he could hear both men laughing in his head. So he turned back around and kept his focus on the tunnel in front of him until they were at the pile of rubble he had created. "Well, at least our exit hasn't been discovered. We will need to seal this back up." Frank had a feeling those comments weren't directed at him. Then the woman stepped closer and took his hand. Her hands were cool, but suddenly his whole body felt warm. "We need you to go to the surface and tell the other this mine is not safe. Do not come back down until tomorrow." When she let go of his hand, everything felt cold again. He knew he needed to get back up to the surface and warm up in the sunlight. The next day, Frank led the crew back down into the mine, with his boss on his heels, wanting to know what had caused the delay. At the end, there was still a pile of rubble, but the archway was gone. "I told you to go straight. Why did you turn?" the boss demanded. "Come see this." One of the miners held up his lantern to the area that had been blasted and the shimmering vein of gold that had been revealed. "Well, I'll be." The boss wasn't angry anymore. "It's a good thing you guys had the day off yesterday, because you're going to be down here until all of this gold is dug out of here. Get those beams in here and get this ceiling supported." Frank stepped aside, letting the men with the lumber get past him. He was glad he hadn't told anybody about what had happened to him, because they all would have thought he was crazy. A couple years later, Frank lay on his cot, tossing and turning. He got up and headed to the outhouse. The moonlight was bright enough for him to see the well-worn path. He stopped when a familiar feeling of calm swept over him. He turned to see the pale woman with silvery white hair. "Greetings." "Shucks, I was beginning to think I had dreamt you up." He chuckled. "Heck, I could be dreaming right now." She smiled. "You are awake. So you can come up to the surface?" "At night. Your sunlight is too bright for us." For a moment he just stared at her. She was even more beautiful than he remembered. The hem of her dress fluttered in the breeze. "Would you like to come into my cabin? It's not much, but I can offer you a place to sit." "I would like that." He held the door for her. She took the only chair he had as he lit the lantern. Her eyes fluttered as the light washed over her. Is that too bright? No, it's fine. She looked around at his wood stove shelves and the bed along the back wall with a curious expression. He closed his trunk and sat down on the lid. I have not heard any explosions in a while, and wondered if you had stopped mining. It was strange to have a conversation when her lips didn't move, but loved the way her voice felt inside his mind. It was like whiskey without the burn. The price of gold has gone down, so most of the people here have gone into the cities to find work. You did not go with them? I didn't see no reason to run off when everything I need is right here. So, if curiosity compels me again, you will be here to greet me? Frank's breath caught as he realized the nervous energy wasn't coming from just him. The end. You can find my books on Amazon and at the Barnes & Noble website. I have Time Depressed, Terraform Earth, Meteor Shooters at Relay Station 4163, and Meteor Shooters on Olathe. Again, I'm C.E. Chester. Thank you for joining me. Have a wonderful day.